Hey everybody, this is Sean. I'm an American English teacher in China right now. I've been here for over 10 years, and currently I am experiencing the lockdown uh, based on the COVID-19, or COVID-19, the new name. Just hear the latest news and developments in my situation here. Share that with the people who are out there listening. Um, So my big concern right now is my visa, and anybody who's been in China knows that their visa is a big deal. It can mean the difference of being able to come back to China or not. And so I'm trying to get that straightened out. Currently, I'm under a residence permit, and usually the transition from one residence permit to another is easy to do once you've established your working situation, and as long as that doesn't change, usually you can sort of transfer your residence permit. You can renew your residence permit essentially with less difficulty. And that's kind of the situation I'm in right now, is where I have a work permit. I'm working for the same employer, and it would just be a matter of renewing that residence permit and sort of extend it under the same sort of work permit. Hopefully, nothing changes there, and that's what I'm concerned about now, especially with all the sort of the situation as it stands now. But it's something I'm definitely sweating. Getting a There's less involved with renewing your residence permit, and so usually they will say you can wait to 2 or 3 days before the expiration date. Still, those reinsurances, considering the situation, are not as not sort of reassuring, because something can change at any point, and there could be a problem arise, which would mean I would, of course, have to leave the country to renew my residence permit and have to go through the whole process of renewing a visa and a work permit and all that. And that's the situation I was in last year, where I had to go to Hong Kong, and I know that option really is no longer there. So if that should ever arise, it really mean having to leave the country. So it's a situation that I'm certainly, very concerned about at this point, seeing as we really haven't gone down to the bureau to start submitting documents and things like that. So I'm very concerned about that. So I have to start to make plans, contingencies that I can, to the extent that I can make my own contingencies. And so yesterday I had to struggle with, booking a flight out of here, basically. You know, Booking a flight out of here just in case. The difficulty about that is, if anybody who's ever traveled, is like you're dealing with, a big sum of money without a cancellation policy. So I'm very reluctant to book that flight, knowing that I could just be throwing a couple $1,000s out the window. I'm not that rich. So what options do you have? You have travel insurance, right? So I was kind of pursuing that angle. So I went ahead and I booked a flight out of the country back to the United States. One other problem I'm seeing arising is that sites like Expedia and Travelocity have taken the Chinese airports right off of their system. They're no longer in the system. They're actually, I think in Travelocity it came up to illegal, which is difficult because they haven't really banned flights out of China at this point. So two of the sort of main travel hubs have excluded them. So you have to go and find flights here and there, and you have to sort of do your research into what countries are still sort of accepting foreign nationals in China, basically. Europe is pretty well established, Japan, South Korea, on this side of the world. And of course, the United States, if you're a citizen, you're still allowed back in. And you face quarantines in all of those areas, as far as I know. So leaving China at this point is very, would concern being, not being able to return for a long period of time, or you'd be faced with a whole set of circumstances that would be just as sort of circumstances and expenses that would just sort of extenuate the difficulties, you know. So anyway, I had to go ahead and I had to figure out what I was going to do, come up with kind of a plan, contingency plan. And so I had originally booked a flight and I had booked travel insurance, but then I had to reverse that because when I checked in with the travel insurance that I had purchased, they said, oh, we can't cover you under this policy because you've been a resident of China for the last 2 years. You need to go through, you need to find travel insurance for Chinese travelers. Difficult to do that. There's not a lot of options at that point, you know. So it's a, you know, it's sort of like a cancellation policy of. Luckily the agency that I booked the flight through was able to cancel it and gave me a full refund. Otherwise, I'd be losing money, throwing money out the window of just booking flights and having to cancel them, you know. Fortunately, that happened, and also with the travel insurance, they, you know, once I got to talk to them, and once again, that's another difficulty because you have to talk, you know, you have to call usually the other side of the world and whatever time zone they're dealing with. So it's not necessarily, you know, it's hard to do that expediently unless they have a 24/7 lines to deal with. Fortunately, they did. I was able to cancel those plans. I am keeping my flights and book my arrangements to Shanghai. My feeling is that if I have to, if nothing happens with my visa between now and the end of the month, because my visa expires on the 1st, I will have to go to Shanghai and then go from there in terms of getting a flight out of the country to preserve my visa status, you know. And that's very important to me, you know. It's something I've kind of always sort of been very vigilant about doing, and I'm going to try and maintain that. In terms of, you know, my opportunities here, I'd hate to see them go, and I certainly want to, after 10 years, I certainly wouldn't want to end it on such a breach, such a sort of final breach, you know. It wouldn't be representative of my work here. So anyway, that's the situation there. I'm waiting for word Friday or Monday. We're supposed to do something with my visa. Hopefully I'll be going to the office, or the exit entry bureau, to actually sort of submit my documents. That gives me a little more reassurance that that the visa will be processed and there won't be any more difficulty with me staying after that period of time. Concerning the virus, I'll talk a little bit about that later. Some other things that are happening here. One of the Ghanese fellows that I work with here, I think I've spoken a little bit about their situation prior. They are here on their visa situation is much more complex than mine, and they're much more vulnerable, I think, to things like deportation. But I spoke to one of the Ghanese. He needed to use my scanner, and I was happy to let him use it. I think he's talking with his embassy in terms of what his options are. Concerned about his country, concerned about their vulnerability to the spread of the virus and what they're doing. You know, the capabilities they have to screen people coming from China and things like that. And you know, I hope things work out for him too. There's not much really I can do to assist him other than, you know, these minor things like letting him use my scanner and stuff like that, which I'm happy to do. Other things that happened yesterday. Big surprise yesterday, the WF moment. So this was mind blowing to me yesterday. But I received my package from Amazon. I had ordered Tivas. From Amazon at the beginning of the month, knowing that my Tivas, these are kind of my essential gear. Essential gear in life, I think, at this point. If you're in China, like Tivas are the best thing for rainy season, monsoon season. You know, the summer. They're the best thing if you're for casual wear, if you're hiking, anything like that. I love these things because I don't have to wear socks anymore. I don't have to deal with shoelaces. I don't have to deal with stinky sneakers. So I love my Tivas, and they're just kind of standard wear for me, standard uniform for me. And my Tivas were worn out. I had them for about 2 years, and they were worn out. And a lot of times, these straps here, how they're fitted into the sole. A lot of times, this will start to rip, and that was happening to my other Tivas. Need a new pair. You know, I started to use some super glue and trying to fix it, but they're pretty well shot, and I wanted to get a new pair, and so I ordered on Amazon. I didn't really realize that Amazon would deliver to China back in the beginning of January, and so I ordered them, and then all this stuff. Then the outbreak happened. This was probably about a week before the outbreak happened. So I was like, all right, those are lost. You know, you're not going to get your Tivas. Because whatever happens, if you have to leave, they're going to come. You know, they might not come here for 2 months now. If you have to leave, they're lost. You know. But I checked the Amazon delivery the other day, and it said out for delivery, and so I was very surprised that I got a phone call yesterday morning, and they leave them. Most deliveries here are sent to a convenience store that's out in front of the complex, and they just kind of, they just drop everything off there, and you go down there and you pick your stuff up. They make a phone call. Usually you'll just get a code or something from a delivery, but I got a phone call, and there it was. I got my Tivas, and that was just kind of the mind-blown moment, because it's very difficult to have things come into China, and with the customs and with the concerns over masks and everything, and how things are. I'm hearing horror stories on like Laoway 86 and ADV China. I hear their horror stories on trying to get masks into the country, and so I really didn't anticipate getting these or medical supplies in the country, and I really didn't anticipate getting these, but here they are. They showed up. So that was my mind-blowing moment of the week. Other things I want to talk about here. Let's pop up this screen. Other things that are going on here. What am I doing to keep myself busy? I'm, doing training. I got a training app, just doing workouts every day. That's kind of helpful, even though I don't really like Nike because of the Colin Kaepernick situation. It's a company that I was using their running apps prior to all that controversy. It's certainly something I have a hard time endorsing, but I do use their training app, and I do continue to use their running app, primarily because it's one of the best apps in China, working apps in China primarily. And their training app is actually quite good too, in terms of they'll give you a good 15-minute workout for different parts of your body or different constant focuses, and I find it pretty good. So I'm doing that every day. Today, the weather, I'll give you a look out there. It's smoggy. It's not healthy to go out anyway. I was kind of concerned. Yesterday it was rainy, and there was a big heavy fog in the air, and I was kind of wondering if they were seeding clouds or they were doing something. I was a little bit suspect to what was going on yesterday, because the air quality had gone up. Prior to that, it had been moderate. It was like 90 something, and there really wasn't any sort of forecast for a spike in air quality. But yesterday, the air quality spiked, and I was just kind of wondering if they were putting, they're misting the air or something was going on there. Kind of curious. I stayed indoors anyway. I'm staying indoors today also. There was a spike. What else in terms of I wanted to miss? I was talking about there was also the big movie drop on the channel. Every once in a while there'll be on the free internet TV. There'll be a big movie drop. There'll be like 20 films added. And so I'm going through those. It was kind of funny because I was thinking about this the other day, being a cinema aficionado. Let me show this film here. There's this movie Special Forces. I was thinking about, like, you never see like foreign films that do takes on American stories, you know? Like you'll see a lot of American studio films that will tell basically a foreign story, you know, through kind of an American perspective. But you rarely see a, you know, like a movie about the Chinese army, or they'll do an American studio will do a movie about Mulan or something like that. But you rarely see like a foreign nation doing a story about like George Washington, or doing a movie about, you know, the American. This one is about an American sort of special forces that was told by a French film studio. It's all in French. I was kind of interested in that sort of angle, especially with the Oscars and the winning and how Parasite won. I was kind of interested in seeing. I was kind of interested in knowing if there were, you know, if there were a lot of these films that, like, you know, tell basically American stories about American people from, you know, from the perspective of a foreign nation. And there's one. This is the Special Forces one, and kind of interesting. So I'm watching movies, food. I got some bananas here. If you never had these bananas, you don't find them in the United States. These are kind of like off the tree bananas. These I really like. I've been eating them ever since I started. Ever since I bought them the first time, way back in China. These are right off the tree. They're these short, squatty ones, but they have much better taste than those long bananas. You can get like your Dole bananas here. You know, Dole distributes bananas here also, but these ones that are right off the tree are just outstanding. So I just want to show them. There's even smaller ones. There's these little bananas, and they're even sweeter. They're even better. But I like these bananas much more. They'll probably make awesome shakes. All right, so let's get on to what I'm looking at here on the internet. Of course, I'm looking at the map. There was a big spike in here in the figures today because they have changed their method of diagnosing to just a very basic one. I guess from my understanding, they've switched over to just very basic ones because they don't have a lot of medical kits. So we're seeing a big spike in the numbers. I'm also hearing that a lot of the people, and this is, you know, going to weigh in on the people who are scared to go to the hospital, because a lot of people are getting infected at the hospital at this point. You know, they're putting them all in the same room, in these very open spaces, and so a lot of people are just becoming infected going to the hospital. So, you know, it seems like the approach is, a lot of the approach is like you're going to get it anyway, and that's very kind of Chinese. Being here as an American, you kind of see the psychology of America is to be very kind of exacting, very fastidious, you know, very sort of like, you know, very sort of particular, you know, in their sciences, very sort of fastidious in their sciences. And where in China, I would say there's more of a hypothetical attitude. But the authority, you know, the authority structure of China has that kind of fastidious aspect. But like you have this huge population that kind of live in that hypothetical. And there's not much medium ground, you know, that's just developing here, you know, where people who see a little bit of this side of it and still see a little bit of this side of it. That would be your middle class. That would take this into account and also take that into account. Whereas in China, you really just have them, the kind of the top people who are the fastidious ones who just, you know, don't take any of that into account. And you have just a huge population of people who don't really take any of that into account, you know. Yeah. So that mitigation of the psychologies is kind of something that you kind of get a feel for, or you kind of get an understanding of, in a lot of ways. And anybody who's ever made these transitions between developments kind of also goes through them. You know, if you started here and that's all you know, you know. But if you started here and you worked your way up to there, and you kind of have a better perspective of how, how things develop. Uh, and China kind of has like a very distinct sort of, like I said, there's a big population that kind of live in that hypothetical. You see a lot of old people who are just like, if I get it and I die, I'm happy I lived my life, basically. And so they're not too concerned about breaking their lifestyle or having anything sort of interrupted that they can't see or they don't know about. It's not something that it's not very real to them until it is real to them. Um, and the measures they can take, and a lot of the measures they can take that cost money, are just kind of things that are just not options. It's like I don't have the money. Like the people who are buying masks, disposable masks, are going to have a lot of money to do that. You're just throwing stuff out. You're buying stuff that is disposable, and you're using them at such an occurrence that you're just kind of, not many people are going to maintain that, especially not in China. Not a lot of people in China are going to be able to afford the kind of money you need to buy yourself out of the situation. Not a lot of China. Like very small percentage of people can buy themselves out of the situation. So they're just like, it's a disease. I've been sick a million times in my life, and if this one gets me, this one gets me. That's a lot of what I see. That being said, I'm seeing here, this is interesting, that like in the statistics is that like there doesn't seem to be a lot of children. I don't know of any children involved in the fatalities. So what I'm thinking is that maybe there's like with China's development, there's been a lot more vaccination, a lot more sort of concern about, developing vaccines, and when a child is born, they're getting these vaccinations because their medicines, their technology, their understanding, their sciences, their access to those vaccines has increased, and so therefore they are protected from it. Those vaccines are giving their immune systems that extra boost that they're going to need. Whereas the you see older generations, which probably don't have those vaccinations, probably don't have it. And then you have this medium ground of people in the last, who are going into the middle class, who are maybe 2 generations back that, might have it or might not have it. And those are the people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And 50 up probably don't have it. 20, 30, 40 might have it, and then you have all the kids who tend to have it. That's my just looking at the statistics and how things are developing. I'm kind of seeing that. I'm also seeing that like a lot of the healthcare workers are getting sick. A lot of the and that's just going to increase the fear of people getting diagnosed and having to go into a situation which is probably worse than than the one they came from. So that's gonna be a problem in terms of people really want to resist it or trying to avoid it, going to the doctors. Just other statistics, like I said, I'm in Fujian province, and if you see over here, Fujian province, as of now, has 279 people confirmed cases here. You see the red dot on this map here, I'm located south of that pretty far. I'm over by Chuanzhou. And there has been 59 recoveries and no deaths. So a good statistic for my province. So far, those numbers are pretty good for my province. I'm glad to see that. That's definitely it's definitely a little bit reassuring in terms of my situation and my neighbor's situation. What else? Now Fujian province is. I looked at the numbers. And you can't depend on consensus numbers anymore. You can depend on them in America. For 20 years they've been harping about like, you cannot depend on American consensus numbers. When they talk about this is the majority, no, it's just not, doesn't add up. When you see this is a minority, I'm like, the consensus numbers are quite wrong. But I've been like that in America, so I don't see how it's any different in China. When this province has, it was reported to have what, 38 million, 38.5 million, with Jinjiang having about 2 million people. So 38 million people, Fujian province, 279 confirmed. That's a pretty strong. That data is comforting, but I would say there's probably more people in the province. It's like I'd say it in America. It's like you can't trust consensus numbers to a great degree. Just as difficult, like I said, it's counting snowflakes in a snowstorm. What else? Take a look at the YouTube channels I'm watching here. Dr. Seaholt here, MedCram, did a great video just recently, talks about sleep. Sleep is probably the most effective means of getting your immune system to fight this thing off. And I couldn't agree with him more. You know, whenever I get a cold or something, I know that like the best thing I can do is just shut everything down and let the immune system do its job. You know, he doesn't really talk about, talks about what the immunity, in his latest video, he does an awesome job of talking about what the immunity system actually does. And he talks about how sleep is really the key, sort of most effective means of fighting a cold, a virus, any sort of infection. And because it gives, you know, it just kind of boosts all its levels, and part of that is because the body is shutting down all those, or is running on very low levels, and it can focus a lot of its energy and resources to just boosting its immunity system. So sleep is very effective. If you find yourself coming down with any sort of symptoms, try and get the rest. Try and get and something I've always been pretty adamant about is getting that 8 hours of sleep. Just because you're so vulnerable if you're not getting that sort of ability to restore your body, its functions, or giving it a chance to rest and sort of do its own management. Other channels here. Laoway put out Laoway 86 here. Matt there, he did a video. He just released a video, or uploaded a video about some couples, some expats that had to evacuate Wuhan. I can't imagine. You definitely know it's a very difficult thing to do in the situation. I'm kind of amazed that there's an American from California here, and I'm amazed that like the American embassy did as much for him as they did. You know, they really kind of bent over backwards in terms of like his wife had an American, was Chinese, and so they had there's a lot of visa issues there, and they just kind of, they figured them all out and got it done somehow. And I'm amazed at that, because I remember when I was in Paris, when I was 18, I ran off to Paris with about like $300 in my pocket, right? And it wasn't long before I was broke and living on the street. So I went to my embassy and I said, you know, I need help getting out of this country. I'm going to starve to death here because I don't know the language. I can't find work. I'm just a kid on the streets who did a stupid thing. Can you give me help? And they were like, no. They were like, what we can do is we can give you advice. Why don't you make a phone call? And that was about it. That was all the help I got from my embassy in Paris when I was 18. And I was like, I don't even have a quarter, man. Can I use your phone? They're like, no. No, they wouldn't even let me use the phone to make that call. It was weird though, because that same day, this blonde girl came in and just started talking to me about her. You know, she sat right next to me, and we got talking about how she was in a theater. I don't even remember what she was there for, but it seemed like she was a connection that I could have ran with. You know, she was working for a theater company in Paris or something. I remember that, our conversation very vividly, and I remember thinking, man, I could jump on this, man. I could run with this. And I was like, just kind of 18 years old, and over my head I felt. So I said, I took her. I never followed up on it. I actually ended up making a phone call and leaving and leaving Paris and getting money wired to me and getting out of there. So kind of interesting parallel there. And the last thing I want to talk about here is the Dollar Store Dynasty. This guy's doing a really great job. Like I said, maybe doesn't really kind of sell material. I don't know if that's really his focus here, but he does a really good job, and he definitely has some really great insights to say. So I'd say check out his channel, and I would say subscribe to him because he does a really great job. All right, that's all for today, February 13th, Thursday. Like I said, I'm going to try and do these every 2 days and just kind of share my latest developments and news from the situation here in China. Who knows if once this passes, if I'll continue or not. But that's how where my thoughts are at today. And I'll leave you with that, and I will ease on out of here. Take it easy.